So this video is going to be a rant about women. Sort of talking about, well, recently I've been having trouble with women, which is nothing new. So I guess back to the start. I had, well, recently I've been having trouble kind of like, I don't know, I have trouble in general, but so what's been happening is uh, my mom was always sort of like, not really a proper parent, and also my dad wasn't there. So I ended up being sort of like her parent as when I was a child. So this is called parentification. It's like when the roles are reversed or mixed up, when the child has to take care of the parent. So it was kind of like that for me, and it was very difficult. And now, as I'm an adult, and actually throughout my life, it's always sort of been that way. And my 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 sort of issue and instinct is always to try and help, right? I'm always trying to fix and help, and it never really fully works, or at least really hasn't, and it's just kind of like it maintains. Let's put it that way, and so it's very frustrating because my what I'm trying to do is actually help and take care of my mom, my family, do what I can do, but that's actually kind of wrong. It's actually kind of reversed in a way, because it's always been reversed. Like when you're a child, you're actually supposed to get taken care of, and then when you get older, you have that ability to take care of your family and everything. But for me, the first part was missing. So that's called parentification. And recently, uh, I was telling my mom this. I was saying to her, because she's staying with me. She's homeless. She's like has nowhere to go, and I let her stay with me, and told her she could stay here. And I've been very nice. I've been trying to do my best to make things, I don't know how to describe it. I guess as a parent would, I've been trying to make it safe. I've been trying to make it stable. I've been trying to make it, uh, just something to help, right? But I also, do more than that as well. Like a lot of things, right? Like normal things too. Like just go for walks together and um, uh, chat and just like also cook meals too. Like she cooks for me, and which is nice. I appreciate it, but sometimes I cook for her, and but basically I'm just trying to. My main thing is that, well, I'm just trying to help my family out, help my mom out. But it's always kind of screwy. And I told her, I said, I'm not the parent. You are the parent. I'm the child. And actually, it's actually kind of like hard for me to say this, but I've been going to therapy. I've been going to this RTMS, and actually I've done a ton of therapy, and I've read all the books, and I've got a psychology degree, so I actually kind of have this stuff. I know this stuff that I can enough that I can say it. But I tell her this, and she seems kind of upset, but I have to be like firm about it because it's the truth, really. And I say, I'm not really supposed to be the one providing the stability and everything, right? Like that. It's like always backwards, So and I think everybody wants their family to do well, right? But it does get complicated when your family really hurts you when you were a child, which that whole parentification thing is really damaging. So, anyways, so my broader point is kind of like a rant as well on or a vent or whatever on being right, like saying the right thing, or saying what you know is right, and people leaving you, or being wrong and people being with you. So I'm talking about social pressure, and what's been happening recently as well is that it's kind of been getting on my nerves, and I know it's partly my fault as well, like that I'm in these situations, but at least I'm trying to figure it out and deal with it properly, I think. But I've been talking to all these women, and what I find with women is it's like impossible to have a serious conversation with them, and they're really stupid, like they're almost like retarded. And I'm not trying to really be extremely mean in a way. I'm more trying to be like descriptive, because what's been happening is that if I bring up something serious, like a serious topic or something, oftentimes with women, they will take it personally. Somehow they will take it personally, and then it becomes all about their feelings. And at that point, it's kind of like the whole thing is fucked, because you cannot really do anything from there. You can't really go anywhere from there, because the main point is basically lost, because now it's been shanghaied or sidelined or diverted from, and then also undermined by a woman getting her feelings hurt. Even if you're just talking about brute facts, even if you're just talking about logic, even if you're just talking about what's going on in the world, really, women don't seem to be able to process it or understand it, and they really want to talk about like something in their life, or how a certain word made them feel, or something like this. And so the message, the main point, the message, it gets lost, and it's like the feelings part, like the immediate feelings of how the woman feels or something, or like her ability to be heard, or her ability to say what she wants to say, or whatever. That becomes the main point. And it's just fucked at that point, because you don't get anywhere. The conversation really goes nowhere, or it moves at like a snail's pace, or it just goes in like a circle, or it's like it's really screwed. Like there's very little you can do about that. So going back to my point though is that, well, is it better to be, and personally I think it is, this first one, is it better to be right and without people, probably temporarily, because there's a lot of people, or is it better to be wrong and with people? So in that instance, it'd be like, oh, you know what, you're right, I'm so sorry, that word I used, it's so inappropriate, I didn't realize that it made you feel that way, I'm really sorry, and I just hope that you can forgive me. So, is it better to do something like that? Meanwhile, you're talking about like, the demographic shift in America, and how it's like shifting hugely. But maybe you said something. You said something that who you're talking to, like if you're talking to a woman that she didn't like. So is it better to just like, you know, completely be wrong and just like forget about, you know what, forget about it. let's not, let's not talk about it. I'm wrong, you're right. Well, I don't know. I honestly, I think that's a worse option, because like these things actually matter. Like these factual things, logical things, um, you know, political things. They actually kind of matter. Like they do matter, and it's really about weight, like, because a lot of people seem to be almost like aware that there's a lot of things going on, but their focus and the weight that they put on certain things is huge, and other things it's like, whatever, kind of. I don't, the demographics shifting, but like, aren't you supposed to love everybody? That's kind of like the argument, Um, so, and it's true, you're supposed to love everybody, but that doesn't mean that everybody has to come to your country. You can. There's 8 billion people in the world. Not all 8 billion of them have to be in your country for you to love them. So there's a weight to things that just kind of gets lost. And so I just find that women are poor at having serious conversations in general. And I think this is due to too much empathy, or suicidal empathy, I think I've heard it termed, something like this. And it becomes toxic, let's just put it that way, because empathy is good. Empathy means in feeling. So it's like if you're feeling what someone else is, that's what empathy actually means. In feeling. And yes, like we do feel what other people, we do feel what's going on with other people, but we kind of have to have like a somewhat of like a balance as well, right? And we can't just let that empathy completely screw us, because there's also other forces at play too. And these forces, I'm talking about governments and propaganda networks and media, they actually use empathy against people a lot of the time, So, and they use it to steer public decisions in a broad way. So you actually have to understand that, acknowledge that as well, right? So yeah, I just find that women they're sort of poor at having serious conversations. It's almost like they have the ability to do it, but a lot of times it doesn't actually result in much action. Sometimes it does, and it depends on the women. I'm not saying this is all women, obviously, but I'm saying it's a minority that are really able to do things in more of the way that a man would, really, because by which I mean, like, logical calculate and then act kind of thing, like, and then trying to realize what we're focused on, and then what outcome we want to achieve. And I find that's kind of hard to do with women. They love gossip as well. If it's gossip, or if it's like a story, if it's in a story form, a gossip form, if it's got to do with like a lot of like, stupid drama as well, then they seem to really love that as well. And they also really love if they're dealing with children, or if they can infantilize you. And by what I mean by dealing with children, I mean like grown-up children, or people that they infantilize, like turn them in, kind of treat them like infants, like, oh, that's so sweet, that's so cute, like kind of thing, you know. um, and so they they have conversations kind of like that a lot of the time. And I'm not really trying to, don't mistake this for like me hating on women. I don't hate them. I just have a different view of them from the Bible, because and from factual things like studies and on the differences between men and women and things like this, because I believe that men and women are equal under God, but that they're complementary. They actually they fit together, but they're different, right? They're not like the exact same, but they do fit together, like, obviously, right? But they're not the exact same, obviously. So I'm just trying to be more descriptive here, really. And also I'm voicing my frustration because it seems like this world doesn't ever want to have that conversation or acknowledge these things ever, anymore, at least, or for some reason. But also, I do want to say that I think that about 80% of people, I'm not sure on this figure, but I do think it's probably close to accurate. About 80% of people are followers. I think it might be even higher than that. And this goes to that idea of that we live in sort of a spectator society. One where there's, if you imagine a gladiatorial or a gladiator arena, there's all the people up in the stands, and then there's, two people or a small group of people in the middle fighting, and then all the people are watching. And then those people kind of, discuss what's going on in the arena, Did you hear that, Polonius killed Achilles in the arena, and then Tremonius came and injured Polonius, and he was so hurt, but he managed to survive. Like, and that would be like sort of like the conversation echoed and repeated around in the arena constantly. And then there'd be people that analyze that further, and then analyze the analysis further, and really there's just like some action going on in the center. So that's kind of like what we live in, is sort of a spectator society. But to put it more accurately, there's also bigger forces outside of that which influence what the gladiators in the center actually do. If we're talking about our today's spectator society, like talking about the politicians or whatever, which are in the arena. Politicians are a good example, but then a lot of them are puppets, or they're sort of on strings. A lot of people know this now. A lot of people knew this for a long time, but more and more people are aware of this now. So anyways, okay, so there is like a social pressure to not disagree with other people, and this is really strong. This is really strong. I can't actually understate how strong the social pressure is that everybody feels to not disagree. It's so strong. It's so strong. Because it's actually really hard, like, to have an open conflict, to become the gladiator in the center. Because what happens when you make a disagreement, so think about it, if you're the gladiators in the center, you're having this conflict, and then everybody else is watching this conflict. So now imagine that you're going through life, and then you have you hear something, or something happens, and you have the option to disagree, to do something else, to speak up, to say, actually, that's not true. you're incorrect. What happens at that point is that all the eyes turn onto you. All the people's gaze, it turns onto you, because it's like that's how kind of society is. It's like there's a lot of spectators, right? Everybody watches TV, YouTube, all this different stuff, reads books. They're all observers. They're all spectators. And the thing that actually a lot of people don't actually understand is that each person is a participant, right? We actually live in a participatory universe. And we know this from the double slit experiment as well. No one can explain that, why being observed changes the outcome of where the electron goes between two slits in the double slit experiment. So actually our observation has an effect, right? We're all participants. So anyways, there's this social pressure to not disagree, because if you do disagree, you're now in the conflict, right? You feel that energy, you can feel something. And sometimes it scares people. It can be very scary, right? Because it's kind of like a risk. It feels risky. But it's also where you're more alive. That's why people are kind of drawn to it as well, right? Every story has conflict, right? Our stories have conflict. Each person's story has conflict. And that is actually, kind of like what our lives are about. So anyway. And that conflict is, us going to God. That's the main conflict, is denying ourselves and picking up our cross and following God. That is the main conflict. So, another thing I find about women, though, is that they have zero accountability, or very low accountability. So I'll give you an example. I made this bet with a friend about the stock market. It was actually her idea. So we were having this kind of argument over Discord at night, maybe 6 months ago, roughly 6 months ago. And, I was saying that actually Canada is in bad shape. Canada is not looking good, like, overall, right? So I'm talking kind of about this decline of the Western civilization. That was my broad theme, but I didn't really say that. I was just kind of saying, actually Canada's not doing well, and America is actually doing better, at least. I mean, obviously America has its own issues. It's probably not doing well. Maybe it's also declining, but Canada especially is doing bad. And I was saying, I was proving that point, sharing some graphs and stuff, and also we were talking about the economy, and they were saying I was saying how Trump is actually good for the American economy, and they were like totally disagreeing. Canadians hate Trump. That's the truth. A lot of them do, because most of Canada is very liberal, and they just have some sort of like a fear of him, like a Trump derangement syndrome. Used to be a really strong thing. It probably still is a pretty strong thing, but that's the sentiment against Trump among a lot of Canadians. And there's a huge division, right? Because there are actually Canadians who support Trump too, like myself, although I have criticisms of him over his support of Israel. But we made this bet about the stock market, because they said that, this female friend said that, the American stock market is doing so bad. Okay, so this was right as Trump was putting in all his tariffs, or there was an effect of his tariffs. And so right then the stock market went down. And a lot of people, they think like this. They're like, stock market's down? That is so terrible, because they don't really understand what affects the stock market and how it will react and move. And I'm not saying I totally understand it. I'm sure I'm kind of almost ignorant on the topic, but I do have a general idea of what is good for an economy. And I knew that Trump getting investment, real investment in the American economy, production, which actually, things that generate wealth, is actually good for the economy and the stock market. And so she was saying that in 6 months, the stock market, it will be doing worse. And I was like, actually, it'll be doing better. So we made this bet. And then she like skewed it to find like the peak of where the stock market was, and was like, it's not going to be doing better than this peak. And I was like, I still knew that it was going to be doing better. So I said, okay, well, let's make the bet. And so now 6 months have gone by, and guess what? It's doing better. And I showed her this and I told her that, and her response was just like, LOL, it's so close. So it's like no ability to say like, I was like, I told you so. And then, but there's no ability to be like, yeah, I was wrong, you were right. There's no like accountability or anything like that. And at the time, she was like really against Trump and like really convinced that the stock market was going to do worse under his leadership. But I knew it was going to do better, and I told her, and it turned out to do better. But there's not really any true accountability, But that's how it is with a lot of people, a lot of women especially, almost all women. Okay, and next I want to talk about. Some quotes here. These quotes are by just some philosophers, and I just want to go through them. And the reason I'm reading is I just want to point out that men have been saying this for centuries, right? Or some men have known, and actually the ancient wisdom has known this stuff. So Nietzsche, here's one, he said, "From the beginning, nothing has been more alien, repugnant, and hostile to women than truth. Her great art is the lie. Her highest concern is mere appearance and beauty." I would say that's pretty accurate for a lot of women. I would not say that's accurate for all women. You know what I mean? And I'm generally going to say this a lot because I do think that there are good women. I think women, they have souls just like men do. And that some women, whether they've had good families, upbringings, or been guided well, maybe even under their own abilities, they do well, right? Or I don't think it's all women, but I do think it's a minority. And that broadly he's correct, right? So Schopenhauer said, "Women remain children all their lives, for they always see only what is near at hand, cling to the present, take the appearance of a thing for reality, and prefer trifling matters to the most important." That's so true. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, that's hard to disagree with that one. A lot of women are really childish like that. But yeah, so. And the thing about them taking the appearance of a thing for reality is very true. I find like abstraction is kind of hard for women. They really love the examples, but when you start to move into abstraction, it gets sometimes it gets hard for them. And of course there's men like this too. I'm not saying it's all men are geniuses or something like that, but anyway. It says by Weininger, no men who really think deeply about women retain a high opinion of them. Men either despise women or they have never thought seriously about them. So I would say that that's not fully true, because actually, if you read the Bible, right, there are good women in there. Women are good. So a lot of this stuff, it is pretty, I don't know. It's accurate about quite a few women. A lot of women. So Hegel said, women are capable of education, but they are not made for activities which demand a universal faculty, such as the more advanced sciences, philosophy, and certain forms of artistic production. Women regulate their actions not by the demands of universality, but by arbitrary inclinations and opinions. Yeah, that's pretty true. There are women who get into the higher sciences, the advanced sciences, philosophy, and certain forms of artistic production. But and you can point to examples of good stuff, but yeah, it's pretty outweighed. It's pretty outweighed by the men that are in there, and then the production of the men, and you need to really rely heavily on like handicaps, or on citing handicaps that women have been under, in order to sort of like balance things and kind of whatever, if you want to make argument heavily for women. But that part about that women regulate their actions by arbitrary inclinations and opinions, that's so true. And then this one by Aristotle, it says, the female is, as it were, a deformed male. The male is by nature superior, and the female inferior, the male ruler and the female subject. Are women deformed males? No, I don't really think so, because again, I go back to the Bible that the woman is man's helper. Now they're different, so I don't think that, and they're complementary, so I don't actually think that one is superior and inferior, but that makes it really hard to acknowledge the fact that men are better at science, math, reasoning, engineering, sports, just like mostly everything. However, does that make them superior? I just think that they're different, but they're complementary. And there's a lot of weight on that word different. Okay. And then this one is from the Fate of Empires. An increase in the influence of women in public life has often been associated with national decline. The Romans claimed that although Rome ruled the world, women ruled Rome. In the 10th century, a similar tendency was observable in the Arab Empire, the women demanding admission to the professions hitherto monopolized by men. What, wrote the contemporary historian Ibn Bassam, have the professions of clerk, tax collector, or preacher to do with women? These occupations have always been limited to men alone. Many women practiced law, while others obtained posts as university professors. There was an agitation for the appointment of female judges, which, however, does not appear to have succeeded. Soon after this period, government and public order collapsed, and foreign invaders overran the country. The resulting increase in confusion and violence made it unsafe for women to move unescorted in the streets, with the result that this feminist movement collapsed. So that's exactly what's going on in the world today. So that's why we're talking about the fate of empires, decline of civilization. That's what's going on today. So at the end of Rome, or yeah, the later Romans, they said that, okay, Rome rules the world, but it's actually the women that are ruling us here in Rome. And that's 100% true of what's going on in these Western countries. Most of them. Maybe Poland, maybe not Poland. I don't know about some of the Eastern European countries. It does seem like the men have a good control of their countries in some of those ones, but, anyway. Okay, and then this part about, you had all these women in the professions. They have all these jobs, university professors, lawyers, judges, all this stuff, and preachers. Like, what? Why are women being preachers? That doesn't make any sense at all. If you actually read the Bible, right? It says right in there, women are not supposed to preach. And yet you do have Christian denominations with women as preachers. Makes no sense. And then they say that soon after this period, government and public order collapsed and foreign invaders overran the country. That's what's happening now. So we're getting invaded by, there's foreign invaders coming in. But it's a silent invasion currently through mass immigration, and it's actually orchestrated. So there's a larger force, which is Jews, who work for the devil, who are orchestrating this collapse. And then it says the resulting increase in confusion and violence made it unsafe for women to move unescorted in the streets, with the result that this feminist movement collapsed. So who were the people that wanted refugees to come in the most? Who were the people that were saying, love everybody, we welcome refugees, we love refugees? It's a lot of women. And sadly, some men were in there too. These men, I have no idea. It's the white Western men, the European men, who actually let this happen. It's the men who are responsible for controlling these things, fending off invaders, being close to God and guiding other people to be close to God. So that they're the ones who let this happen. But then it says women couldn't move in the streets. Well, now the streets are filled with foreign invaders in a lot of these cities and countries, Paris and everything, and the women don't feel safe. They stick to the areas where it's safe, right? So they want the best of both. They want it to be safe, but they don't want. They also want a ton of immigration and refugees. Well, that stuff doesn't work. That those things are incompatible, due to the fact that if you bring hordes and swaths of people in, or let hordes and swaths of legal immigration in and all this stuff, or even let them in legally from these countries where they're Muslim, where they're, I don't know, their IQs are on average lower and everything. They don't actually integrate or assimilate very well if you bring tons of them in. And especially if you bring a ton of men in, like fighting age males. Well, the rapes and everything in all these countries like Paris have been skyrocketing, so women don't feel safe. So anyways, it's a huge mess. Okay, so I have time to do a couple more. Okay, so 1 Timothy 2 verse 12 says, "But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence." This is a good verse from the Bible, where it's just talking about women should not be usurping authority from men and trying to teach and everything. It gets really screwy, right? When you start trying to make all these concessions and everything. And eventually you start getting women trying to be preachers. Like, that's how bad it is in some of these Christian churches where they follow the Bible. They have the Bible. They have in there 1 Timothy 2 verse 12, but they don't actually follow that. They don't actually read that. And I shouldn't be pointing out the speck in some people's eye when there's a log in mine. I'm not perfect either. I'm a sinner just like they are. But I think that we have to be able to at least talk about these things, right? Okay, so another quote here. Queen Victoria said, "I am most anxious to enlist everyone who can speak or write to join in checking this mad, wicked folly of women's rights, with all its attendant horrors, on which her poor feeble sex is bent, forgetting every sense of womanly feelings and propriety. Feminists ought to get a good whipping. Were women to unsex themselves by claiming equality with men, they would become the most hateful, heathen, and disgusting of beings, and would surely perish without male protection." Yeah, I mean, she's talking about there is a role for women. Women do have a role, right? Women do have a place, right? But it's God-given. And then this next one is I'll just give a summary, but it's about this play by Aristophanes called, I think it's called Assemblywoman, or Women in Parliament, or Women in Power, from 391 BC. So it's just saying that it's a play about women get into power, and then they institute a communist-like government. They enforce ideas of equality by allowing each man to sleep with any woman, provided that he sleeps with every woman in Athens who is uglier first. So they're enforcing, no fat shaming, they're trying to enforce mating preferences, essentially no fat shaming, and then yeah, it was it portrays a view common at the time, where Aristophanes is poking fun of women as being lazy, drinking excessively, and making their husbands' lives into hell. And he's pointing out that, and he's making fun of these ideas of private property, abolition of the family, and purely material prosperity. So, yeah. Okay, I'm almost out of time, but I got quite a few more good ones. So anyways, Schopenhauer said, "Women are directly adapted to act as the nurses and educators of our early childhood, for the simple reason that they themselves are childish, foolish, and short-sighted. In a word, are big children all their lives, something intermediate between the child and the man, who is a man in the strict sense of the word." That's another one by Schopenhauer is good, saying that women kind of have sort of like a childishness to them throughout their life. I don't think that's all women, though. Like I said, if women come from a good family, if they are read the Bible, if they know their role, I think that they can actually be mature, very mature, but in the female sense, right? Which is actually beautiful. And then this next one, it talks about, it's just a meme. It says that, did you make a woman angry online? She's going to use some form of one of these insults, saying your dick is small, or saying your dick doesn't get enough attention from women, or she'll say you like putting your dick inside other men. So that's actually really true, of kind of like the argument that happens online a lot. Geez, I got so many good ones, but that'll have to do.